Good afternoon. My name is Randy Haskin. I'm the founder of Nanobiologics Research Corporation, and please bear with me. This is my first digital presentation. Before we start on the science of nanocannabinoids, I'd like to give you a little bit about my background. By education, I'm an organic chemist, a compounding chemist. I spent most of my days in academia and then most recently in R&D for the last 2 decades. What led me into the cannabis world was my daughter, who suffers from Crohn's disease. And in our plight, trying to find some relief for her, led us into the cannabis world. What we found in about the year 2010, and doing our initial research into the type of cannabis that may help her, we found very difficult to purchase cannabis that was properly tested. We had no idea how it was grown, what toxins might have been used, so on and so forth. In an effort to find a laboratory that could give us satisfaction, we ended up having to open our own laboratory. Together with my son, we developed the methodology, the testing methodology to analyze the cannabis flowers, not only for their potency, but for other toxins. We became the first ISO-accredited 17025 cannabis analytical laboratory in the United States. It was known as CannaSafe. After a few years with CannaSafe Analytics, we were led to believe that the real future in cannabis is going to be in the infusion of nanomolecules. And in 2017, I left the analytical laboratory and opened Nanobiologics Research. And for the next 3 years, we were strictly an R&D function, where we developed some exciting IP, both in water matrices and oil matrices, in different concentrations of nanocannabinoids. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about the endocannabinoid system so that we can understand how our bodies titrate cannabinoids before we talk about what nanozation actually does for the absorption of cannabis into the body. The endocannabinoid system is a system that's produced in your body during its infancy. And once you leave your mother's womb, the endocannabinoid system, a system that we know very little about as compared to the other systems of the body. We're just learning what the endocannabinoid system is capable of doing. But in those first few days of life, and in fact the first 24 weeks of life, a fetus, now an infant, is developing all of its systems that will support life as they grow and mature. Those systems aren't fully formed. We're talking about a central nervous system, the endocannabinoid system, which is not fully formed yet at the time. We're talking digestive system, muscular system, skeletal systems. None of these systems are fully formed. They are mostly formed, mostly completed within the first 24 weeks of life. During that period, one of the most important systems is the endocannabinoid system. It is the protection from this toxic world that that infant has just been thrown into. The endocannabinoid system, in and of itself, doesn't really heal or do anything for the body, except put the body and all its other systems in homeostasis. It's like the conductor of an orchestra. Every other system, as now it's forming in this infant, is being propped up, interfaced, so that it will work in harmony with all the other systems of the body. Unfortunately, the endocannabinoid system does not grow like all the other systems in your body. The endocannabinoid system is composed of CB1 and CB2 receptors. These receptors at birth will be the same number of receptors you have as an adult. What we did discover during the this period of time, actually over centuries of time, that there are cannabinoids that exist outside of your body that are not produced by the body. They're produced by certain types of plants. The one that produces the most exogenous cannabinoids is the cannabis plant. The cannabis plant actually consists of about 80 different cannabinoids plus terpenes. A total of about 480 chemicals exist inside the plant. To take that plant and put it in a format that can be titrated by the body and then influence the receptors, almost like taking vitamins for an endocannabinoid system. That system puts every other system in balance. So with this array of cannabinoids that are available from the plant, we now want to separate those cannabinoids that we know will work on different maladies within the body, be it inflammation that causes pain, or different types of malignancies that may be growing that we don't want in our body. The cannabinoids, the endocannabinoids, aren't in a large enough capacity in your body, in volume enough to be useful against balancing your body so that your other systems can address the problems. The or exogenous cannabinoids from the cannabis plant then act as these substitutes to invigorate your endocannabinoid system, turn on those receptors, the CB1 and CB2 receptor, and address the problem at hand. In order to extract the cannabinoids from the plant, this has been an effort for the last decade and is growing in nature. The manufacturers of these oils and isolates are becoming very sophisticated, and the products are very pure. So instead of dealing with a whole plant and all the other toxins that may be in it, the science has taken us now to extracting just CBD from the plant in its pure format as an oil or an isolate, just THC, just CBG, just CBN. Each one of those different cannabinoids will have a different effect in the body. Because these extractions are all lipids or oils, we know that we're going to have a bit of a problem getting those into the cellular structure. First, they have to be absorbed or titrated into the body through ingestion. Then, after ingestion, it passes to the small intestines where it's further broken down, passed on to the liver, which purifies and removes any toxins that may be there, and then finally into the bloodstream, which is 90% water. And we know that oil and water doesn't mix. What we came to realize on a science level is that if we can increase the surface area of the available cannabinoids, we could greatly increase the bioavailability of those compounds. As an example, I want you to think about a block of salt. And you're going to take this block of salt and place it in a warm bathtub. The salt will eventually dissolve into the water, molecule by molecule. We're thinking of the salt as a conglomeration of all these molecules. But in order for them to dissolve and disperse into the water can only dissolve the surface area of that block. This process could take days depending on the size of the block of salt. Now imagine if we took that block of salt and we cut it into quarters. Now we have 4 smaller blocks. We've increased the surface area by a factor of 4. Now it will dissolve much quicker than the one large block. What we do on a molecular level is we take a drop of oil, which will not mix with water, and we break that down into its smallest possible conglomerated group, the smallest possible that will hold together as the analyte, a pure CBD. As an example, in 1 gram, we know we have 1,000 milligrams of the component that makes up that gram. In this case, 1 gram of CBD will have 1,000 milligrams of CBD. Milligram is a dosing instrument. In those milligrams, each milligram, if we broke it into its smallest constituent, we would break it down into nanograms. Every one of those milligrams contains 1,000 nanograms. So going back to our 1 gram of oil now becomes 1 million nanograms. We've taken our block of salt and powderized it and dropped that powder into the bathtub. That powder will disappear and be absorbed, dissolved into the water almost immediately. This is the theory behind nanomolecules. We do the same thing with CBD, and we introduce it to the body through the gut, through a baked product, through a beverage. Introduced to the gut, it goes to the small intestine rather quickly, and then it's absorbed directly into the bloodstream from the small intestine. This is the beauty of nano. Instead of sending that compound to the liver to be further purified, detoxified, and then sent on to the bloodstream, it goes directly into the bloodstream. The onset of nano is one of the best functions in order to properly dose a product. If we don't know exactly how much of that 1 gram of oil is going to pass from the small intestine to the liver, how much the liver is going to synthesize that into different compounds. For example, delta 9 THC, once passed on to the liver will convert that to delta 11 THC as it removes any possible toxins. Then it goes to the bloodstream as delta 11, which is much more potent in its psychoactivity than delta 9. In the case of nano THC, it would pass to the bloodstream from the small intestine. Now we don't have to be concerned with how much of that big oil droplet is going to be absorbed, how much of it is going to change when it goes first past through the liver. We know whatever we put in, if we put in 20 milligrams, the small intestine is going to pass on 20 milligrams to the bloodstream. And because they're so small, the surface area is so tiny, water molecules will wrap around these cannabinoid molecules and introduce them as if a Trojan horse is being brought into the cellular structure, where then once in the cells, they can do their magic. Now that we have a little bit of an understanding of how a nanomolecule exposes more surface area, becomes more available to the body, let's speak for a moment about bioavailability and bioequivalency. Bioavailability speaks to how much did we put in and how much was actually absorbed. In our demonstration earlier, we talked about how many nanograms there are in a single milligram. How does that translate into a product that the manufacturers out there want to infuse with cannabinoids? Let's take a gummy as an example. If you have a gummy that's made with isolates or oil, and it's dosed at 25 milligrams, you ingest that gummy, it passes from the gut to the small intestine. At that point, the small intestine, the molecules, the conglomerated CBD molecules, are of such a large size that the small intestine, while it can break it down a bit, sends it off onto the liver, where the liver then, through its first pass, will either synthesize or further break down that molecule, that conglomeration of molecules, so that it does become, or a certain percent of them become available, and it passes that on to the bloodstream. Every compound is a little bit different. In the case of cannabinoids, We know, depending on the type of cannabinoid, we know anywhere from a low of 6% to a high of 12% will actually be passed on and absorbed into the blood. In the case of nanomolecules, once they enter the gut and they're passed on to the small intestine, because their size is 1/1000th of a milligram, it is small enough for the small intestine to pass that on to the bloodstream without going to the liver for first pass synthesis. So now we have the ability to actually dose the correct amount. On our example of the 25 milligram gummy made of oil or isolate, let's say 10% makes it through the first pass and goes into the bloodstream. So of that 25 milligram gummy, what's actually become bioavailable to you is 2.5 milligrams. The rest has been lost in the process. If this is nano, that 25 milligrams never gets passed on to the liver. Never has to go through a first pass to get into the bloodstream. It's passed from the small intestine directly into the bloodstream. Therefore, a gummy made with 25 milligrams of nano CBD will have a bioavailability of 25 milligrams, not 2.5. This translates then from a manufacturer's standpoint to increasing the margins and, depending on how you want to dose, decreasing the cost. So this brings us to another concept, and that is bioequivalency. And itself, it introduces itself. Equivalency is an equivalent amount of one substance that you must take or use to gain whatever results you want of another substance. For example, if you've got a gummy that has a label that says there's 25 milligrams, but it's made from oils or isolates, you're going to get 2.5 approximately in your system. You have a second gummy with 25 milligrams of nano CBD, you will get 25 milligrams or 10 times the amount into your system. What does it mean as a bioequivalent? It means you need to eat 10 of those isolate gummies to get into your body bioavailable the same amount that one of the nano gummies will give you. That's bioequivalency. That also translates into your margins. What does it do for the consumer? For the consumer, it's so much better. Number one, we know it's dosing accurately. Number two, because it's in and out of your bloodstream in the matter of hours instead of, in some cases, days, we can still test for the analytes of THC 2 days after it's been consumed. In the case of a nanomolecule, because there is no first pass, there's no lingering around in the liver, it's used by the body and absorbed by the body without passing on any toxic waste. And the consumer now feels the onset coming from the small intestine, not having to go through the liver, within minutes as opposed to hours. And there is no lingering effect. When it's used, it's gone to its proper use, it's been absorbed into the body, and it's used. The next thing it does for the consumer is in the area of pain. If you can imagine, and we've worked a lot with opioid addicted people, because of the absorption so quickly into your bloodstream, if you have neuropathic pain, if you have arthritic pain, if you have pain due to an injury, we have capsules that are combinations of THC and CBD, all in the nano state, which can address each and every one of these types of pain differently, and it does it almost instantly in your body. We have balms and creams that will do the same thing topically. We can produce in low concentrations nanocannabinoids, both chemically and thermally stable in a water matrix, or we can produce the nanocannabinoids that are both chemically and thermally stable in a lipid or oil matrix. Those could be in high concentrations. Even just a few drops could contain up to 500 milligrams of nanocannabinoids. In the case of water, it's a very low concentration, but we have to remember that we have a minimum of a 6-to-1 advantage over the use of isolates or oils. The other component of our water matrix is that we've developed at Nanobiologics a protected method, IP, that does not use surfactants. Surfactants are nothing but soaps. They're a co-solvent. So in order to hold these oils in a pure water matrix, you have to add a little bit of surfactants to stabilize it. Otherwise, it will separate. The oil and the water separate. In the case of nano, holding those stable like that, we can do it without the use of surfactants. The advantage is surfactants taste like soap. They're bitter. You put even a small amount in water, it's going to have that bitter aftertaste. Without surfactants, it does not. Also, there's a color change. The surfactants will create a milky color in the concentrate. And when you put it in water, you're going to have a diffused, milky kind of look to the water. Without surfactants, it's completely clear. So your options, depending on what you're manufacturing, could either be in a low concentration water matrix for beverages, or it can be in a high lipid concentration for other infused products, baked products, gummies, things of that nature. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the digital audience for any questions that you may have. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.